Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to explore the Intellij IDE integrated development environment, install the Apache Maven building tool and its dependencies, and also install the dependencies for the Java libraries of REST-Assured and JUnit in order to perform automated API testing. Watch until the end of the video for the whole process, and if you found it useful, press the like button. Let's find out. The first thing that you will need to do is to install the Intellij IDE. Here's the official website, and we can go to the download page. In my case, I'm using a Mac. It's Apple Silicon. So if we go to the download section, for Mac users, what you need to do is to drag this to the applications. For Windows users, most likely you will have to execute the MSI or exe file. We can create a new project. Let's call it test project. And as we said earlier, we're going to use the Maven building tool. The first time you run the Intellij IDE, you might have to download the JDK, but this will be suggested by the IDE already here. As you can see, there is already an AI assistant that we can install. I believe that this is coming with the paid version or a trial version. Next thing you would want to do is check if you have Maven installed. I'll go in the terminal, type mvn-v. We can see that Maven is installed here. If it's not installed in your machine, you can run through install Maven. If you have Windows, you need to go to the official website of Apache Maven, download the zip file, and configure it in your environment variables. So the next thing that will be useful to do is to add your dependencies. So you need to go to the pom.xml file and add your dependencies for the Java REST-Assured and for the JUnit. Here REST-Assured should be 5.5.1 version. And we need to sync the changes. So if we press here, the dependencies most likely will be accepted. And as we can see, this has gone through. So our POM file is now ready. And now we're ready to write our first test in the test cases. So we can see here the source code, we have the main and the test, where we can create the first class. So we can start writing our tests. So let's create a new class and call it test class. We can start writing our tests there, so we can double check if everything is working correctly. Test method. First thing we will need to do is define our URI, our uniform resource identifier. So write REST-Assured base URI. And what we can use in this case is a ready-to-use API that has some predefined get and post endpoints. We can choose the first one, which is a list of all objects. We're using the get method. This is the full URL, but we're going to break it down. So the base URI is this, and the /objects is the actual endpoint for the get method. And the REST-Assured syntax starts with given when, which is actually stating about the method that we're going to use. In this case, we're going to use the get method. What we're going to change here is the test and write object as, no, it was objects. So this is the actual endpoint. Then we need to write then, which is going to validate the response. Let's go ahead and write log all in this case, as we want to capture the whole response. And status code would be at this point 200. We can change it, for example, to 400, but that means that if our response is successful and gives 200, our test will fail because it would be expecting 400. So in this case, we want to just expect 200. So there are two ways to run this test. We either press a button or we can go to the terminal and we can write mvn test. And as we can see here, the whole response is being captured. We got successfully the body of JSON that we were supposed to. So if we check in the actual website, that was the response we were supposed to get, and that's what we got. So this first very simple test was done in order to show how we can execute the get method, and we automatically got the response and the validation that everything went fine and the status code was 200. So if we run it once more, we see that everything passed and we got the whole response properly. If we would, as we said earlier, if we would change this to 400, for example, our test would fail. Because the expectations failed, expected status was 400 as we defined here instead of 200. Another thing that we could try is instead of executing the get method, we can try to execute the post method to see if our endpoint is working properly. So for example, we can go to the post method and check the request body. So this is the body that we need to pass as JSON in our request in order to get the appropriate response. First thing we need to do is define, so we can define a variable string, name it request body, for example, and we can add the JSON body into this string. And here in the REST-Assured syntax, we need to define the content type, which in this case is JSON, and we need to pass the request body string, and this request body is the string that we defined, and it includes the JSON object. Here we would just need to change this to post method and double check that the endpoint is right. As we can see, the endpoint is right. It's /objects. So let's run this test. And we can see that the test is successful. We're getting again all the logs. And according to the body that we sent, we're getting the appropriate response, which is MacBook Pro 16, year 2019, price 1849.99. And we can see that this is the appropriate response. Here we have created this test class. We can change the structure of this test a little bit. So what we could do is instead of running the test here, we could define this method to just be executing the API, and we can be passing this argument from a different class. We can make it static and to be returning a response object. can make it invoke API. We can keep the post method, so we can double check what we did earlier. And this method will be receiving an argument, which in this case we can call it request body and it's of type string. Last thing we need to do is to make this method to extract the response, and here to add the return statement. So this method now should be working fine. So we can create a new class to explore different cases, how we can call our test class from a different class. We can create the test method. We can create an object of test class. That's a good shout. TC equals new test class. And TC now is an object of test class, so we can invoke any method that is in there as long as it's public. Let's define now the request body that we want to pass into the new method. And let's try to call invoke API method. And pass as an argument the requested body. Need to define that this is a test method. And let's run it, see what we can get here. That's great. We got back the same response. We just called test class from test2 class. So that's useful because we could define a different method here, such as a method that is validating our response, for example, and we could call it from a different class, and that would keep our test steps a bit separated from the main test method. Because in more complex tests, for example, here we could be having several steps of invoking the API, validating the response, making some more analysis. And in this file, we would just be having plain the test. So what we could do in this case is create another method that is validating, for example, the response. Validate response. It would be receiving again the same argument as the above. And we could create a response object that is actually a product of invoke API method. Now this response object will be containing the actual response from the API, which in this case is this JSON body. And let's say, as we expect that the year is 2019 from the response object, we can define a variable and create some assertions in order to compare our variable and the variable that is included in the response object. We can find an integer, we can call it year 2019. We can create some assertions. So in this method, we can include the year that we are expecting, which is in this case 2019, and the year that is included in the response object, which should be 2019, but we are performing this assertion in order to provide this example. So if we have written this correct, it should be providing the data year, which is 2019, and it should be matching our predefined year, so there shouldn't be any issues. So let's go and run this method validate response. And if we run the test, we can see that everything passed properly. So we can write a printed response in order to double check that everything is working correctly. So let's just go and explain that year matches the expected value. And if we rerun this test, we can see that we're getting the appropriate message. If this year would be 2018, while the response object includes the 2019 year, we would most likely fail in our test. And as we can see, the test has failed because the expected is 2019, the actual is 2019. So that's it. In this video we have covered how to install the Maven building tool and how to install the dependencies for JUnit and for the REST-Assured libraries. If you liked the video, please press like and subscribe. Also, if you have any questions, write them down below in the comments. Thank you and see you in the next video.